One morning, folks. I'm glad that you were able to make it through here. And one of the things that I'm trying to do is because when you're looking through the book of Daniel and Revelations, it can be very, very, very puzzling and very hard to understand. And so I had to spend about 3 years to try and make sense of it as best I could, learning from certain scholars that I looked at. So this talk, over the next 4 weeks, I'm going to be talking about the 4 major ancient kingdoms of the earth that wanted to dominate the whole world. The domination of the world, which is what the Antichrist in our near future will also want to dominate the world we live in today. So the first talk just now will be ancient history of prophecies being fulfilled, and then the next talk, next week, we'll be looking for evidence for a pre-tribulation rapture. And next week after that will be the mystery of Revelations, how it can be very puzzling to try and make sense of it. And then of course we'll be talking on the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. And then on the very last talk, we'll be looking into what's going on in the world today, and to look at the foundations that will be laid for the coming Antichrist, for when he brings his world dominion that eventually takes over the whole world eventually. Tonight we'll be looking at the prophecies of the book of Daniel being fulfilled, which line up with ancient history, and this is before and after the time of Daniel. So these 4 kingdoms or prophecies are Babylon, Medes and Persians, because the Medes and Persians, they kind of join forces with each other and create their own form of kingdom. And then of course you've got the kingdom of Greece, which is 3rd, and then lastly will be the kingdom of Rome. So anyway, this is a very careful study on the end time scriptures. I've worked on this for 3 years, as I said. I've also spoken in my own hometown, local church on the subject, and I've even created an ebook on this topic. The ebook is very, very detailed, but it would be too much for me to talk on in this lecture. And I'll be using scripture to interpret scripture, which is usually taught in Bible colleges as well. So that's what we'll be using. Now this is the pattern I noticed when looking into prophecy, so I can teach us how to read prophecy. Is that what I noticed, right? The pattern I noticed is that prophecy does not just focus on the future, but it also focuses on the past and the present also. This is the biblical pattern I kept noticing when I was reading this. So it depends on the context of the prophecy. It wants you to be aware of the past, but it is not always focused on the past. And I will show you some examples of how this works, so we can get a good understanding of this. And a good example would be the book of Revelations, Revelation 17, verse 10. And it says here, "And there are 7 kings, 5 are fallen, and 1 is, and the other is not yet come. And when he cometh, he must continue a short space." So what we're telling here is that we've got 5 kings in the past, and then we've got 1 which is present. At the time there was a king that was still alive while John was writing Revelations, and then another that is not yet come, and he's going to be somewhere in the future, our future, at some point. So and here's another example when you compare Daniel 11 with historical facts. And it says here, I, Daniel, in the first year of Darius the Mede, even I stood to confirm and to strengthen him. And now will I shew thee the truth. Behold, there shall stand up yet 3 kings in Persia, and the 4th shall be far richer than they all. And by his strength, through his riches, he shall stir up all against the realm of Grecia. Now when you read that prophecy like that, it seems like as if he's talking about something in the future, but he's actually not. That's what I realized here. Because when I looked into the ancient history to look at these Persian kings, because I found the 4th one was a very, very wealthy king. And so here's the list here. The very first one is Cyrus II the Great. He's a past king. Cambyses II, again another past king. And then we've got Darius I, which is again, at the time of Daniel, when he was writing this riddle. So he's a present king, just as we learned. And Xerxes I, a very wealthy king, and he went to war with the Greeks in the future. So really the prophecy is about after Darius the Mede. So he saw it. And then of course, historically, when I look at the accuracy of the scriptures here, you find another king, which would have been a fifth king, but there was no proof that he was ever a king in the first place. And that is Smerdis, the son of Cyrus the Great of Persia. But the historians say that he was possibly a king, but there was no proof that he was ever a king. But usually people would know, because kings want the whole world to know that they were a king, So, but we can't find any evidence that he was ever one in the first place. So I find it very interesting that the scriptures are not talking about that. And there's just a source here, so you can find 1, 2, 3, and 4 of those kings, just as the scriptures say. And here's another, just to show you the historical facts here from a source, is was Xerxes the Great, powerful, powerful king, whose death destroyed an empire, and he is best known for leading a massive invasion of Greece. So again, just as the Bible said. We're going to be analysing the book of Daniel now. So what I'm going to be doing is that I'm going to be beginning to read Daniel chapter 2, verse 29 to 45. And this is the dream of King Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, being interpreted by Daniel the prophet. And this also lays the foundation for most of what I will be talking about as well. So in Daniel 2, just going to read that, verse 29, it says here, "As for you, O king, thoughts came to your mind while on your bed about what would come to pass after this. And he who reveals secrets has made known to you what will be. But as for me, this secret has not been revealed to me, because I have more wisdom than anyone living, but for our sakes who make known the interpretation to the king, and that you may know the thoughts of your heart." Verse 31. "You, O king, were watching, and behold, a great image. This image, whose splendor was excellent, stood before you, and its form was awesome. This image's head was of fine gold, its chest and arms of silver, its belly and thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, its feet partly of iron and partly of clay. You watched while a stone was cut out of without hands, which struck the image on its feet of iron and clay, and broke them in pieces. Then the iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, and the gold were crushed together, and became like chaff from the summer threshing floors. The wind carried them away, so that no trace of them was found. And the stone that struck the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. This is the dream. Now we will tell the interpretation of it before the king. You, O king, are a king of kings, for the God of heaven has given you a kingdom, power, strength, and glory. And wherever the children of men dwell, or the beasts of the field and the birds of the heaven, he has given them into your hand, and has made you ruler over them all. You are this head of gold. But after you shall arise another kingdom inferior to yours, then a third kingdom of bronze, which shall bear rule over all the earth, or rule over all the earth. And the fourth kingdom shall be as strong as iron, inasmuch as iron breaks in pieces and shatters everything. And like iron that crushes, that kingdom will break in pieces and crush all the others. Whereas you saw the feet and toes, partly of potter's clay, and partly of iron, the kingdom shall be divided, yet the strength of the iron shall be in it, just as you saw the iron mixed with ceramic clay. And as the toes of the feet were partly of iron and partly of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken, fragile. As you saw iron mixed with ceramic clay, they will mingle with the seed of men, but they will not adhere to one another, just as iron does not mix with clay. And in the days of these kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom, which shall never be destroyed. And the kingdom shall not be left to other people. It shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. Inasmuch as you saw that the stone was cut out of the mountain without hands, and that it broke in pieces the iron, the bronze, the clay, the silver, and the gold. The great God has made known to the king what will come to pass after this. The dream is certain, and its interpretation is sure. And there's just an image there of a small rock coming down to destroy the statue. And then the rock eventually turns into a mountain, which is symbolic of God's kingdom on the earth eventually. So here's an overview, a quick overview of Daniel 2. The king of Babylon, he is dreaming of a large statue. The statue is made of 4 metals and clay. The prophet Daniel interprets the dream. The metals symbolize kingdoms. God eventually is destroying these kingdoms, and then eventually God is establishing his kingdom on the earth.
Amen.
Now we are going to move on to Daniel chapter 7. In this chapter, Daniel himself has a dream concerning the future and Antichrist coming to power in end times. Another attempt for world domination by an evil ruler in modern times. So that will be in our future. Daniel chapter 7, verse 1. In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream and visions of his head while on his bed. Then he wrote down the dream, telling the main facts. Daniel spoke, saying, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the 4 winds of heaven were stirring up the great sea, and 4 great beasts came up from the sea, each different from the other. The first was like a lion, and had eagle's wings. I watched till its wings were plucked off, and it was lifted up from the earth, and made to stand on 2 feet like a man, and a man's heart was given to it. And suddenly another beast, a second like a bear, it was raised up on one side, and had 3 ribs in its mouth, between its teeth. And they said thus unto it, Arise and devour much flesh. After this I looked, and there was another like a leopard, which had on its back 4 wings of a bird. The beast also had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. After this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible, exceedingly strong. It had huge iron teeth. It was devouring, breaking in pieces, and trampling the residue with its feet. It was different from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. I was considering the horns, and there was another horn, a little one, coming up among them, before whom 3 of the first horns were plucked out by the roots. And there in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking pompous words. So speaking great words.